Hi, I'm Elora, and I am a fat girl, fat woman. Not chubby, not plump, fat. Ooh, the F word. I have always been fat. I was born fat, I grew up fat, and I was also a fat teenager. Not to say I never tried any methods that would make me not fat, especially when you're surrounded by teenage girls who weren't. Now, while I do respect everyone's journey to body acceptance, today I want to focus on my perspective as a fat girl. Imagine how it felt for me as a fat girl being surrounded by people who thought less of themselves because they felt fat. They felt less of themselves because they couldn't fit into an extra small shirt or small size jeans. Meanwhile, here I am at 13 years old and I hated shopping for clothes with my mom. Because we would have to spend hours and hours trying to find something that would fit. By age 14, I was already begging my mom to buy me black clothing for our holiday parties. She didn't know that it was because I saw the woman on TV and she said black was slimming. For me, I was happy enough to fit in a large and then eventually an extra large. I have never, not once in my life, fit in a medium, let alone a small. So how do you think it made me feel when thin women felt unattractive, felt ugly, and they wouldn't believe me when I called them beautiful? I felt inadequate. I felt like I was unworthy. If there was ever a word that meant greater than ugly, that's how I felt. I felt like I was wrong. I was young. At that point, I felt like I hadn't made any monumental mistakes. And yet, how come I felt like my body was wrong? It was wrong for existing the way that it did. I didn't feel worthy enough to call myself beautiful. I didn't feel worthy at all. No, Elora, you're beautiful, even if you're fat. But how could I think of myself as beautiful if they couldn't believe it themselves? And it wasn't my friend's fault. It wasn't entirely their fault. They were just teenagers too. They were teenagers just like me who were unknowingly raised by the idea of fat phobia. Fat phobia, as defined by the Cambridge Dictionary, is when we have an unreasonable treatment towards someone just because they're fat. But when I say that we were unknowingly raised by the idea of fat phobia, what do I mean? Yes, we've all heard it. Family reunions greet us with the ever so popular acknowledgement of our weight changes. But in this regard, I want to talk about how the media has highly influenced our notion of a perfect body. The perfect body. I wish that. I spent my teenage years watching Western TV shows telling thin models that they had to lose more weight. In 2011, I had a friend who was interested in going into the local show business. She called me on the phone after her first day of her acting workshop, crying. She was told that she needed to lose weight. I was 16, she was 17. I was already well over 200 pounds, and she barely hit 100. And no, I am not exaggerating. In an article by Kay Ballesteros and John Alvin Tapia, they acknowledge that in 2021, while we do have a progression in body positivity, the Philippines still lacks body diversity representation in media. They talk about the struggles of understanding how they can feel comfortable about their bodies when in reality, brands still choose celebrities who fit the mold to represent healthcare products. So is that what makes me wrong? Just because I'm fat, you think I'm unhealthy. When people see a thin girl, they don't question the unlikeliness of her health. But when they see a fat person, suddenly we're already so keen to make comments about proper diet and workout. I read this article where this woman was walking down the street. The writer of the article was walking down the street, and suddenly a vehicle stopped right in front of her. And she thought to herself, this person might need help. So she runs to the aid of this person. Suddenly, the driver of the vehicle handed her a business card. Turns out this person saw her and suddenly thought, by the way, I have a weight loss business. 100 pounds and gone, just like that. She was walking down the street. In the same article, Ameya Nagarajan talked about how the media depicted fat people. She says that if you ever see a fat body on screen, it's usually out of mockery or a person who tries hard to not be fat. When I was woke enough to realize the role of fat people in media, I realized that they were either the class clowns or the unintelligent bully with a bodyguard. I realized they were either comedians or the muscle. I realized that I was neither of them. I'm not funny. I don't know how to pull off a good joke. But surprise, surprise, the media had my back. Turns out, I didn't need to make a joke. I didn't need to throw a punchline. Because I am the punchline. Fattertainment, the media's way of making us the joke, the very subject of mockery. Interestingly enough, obesityaction.org tells us that some Americans actually think that fattertainment is not just justifiable, but also beneficial. They actually think that by making fun of us, it actually motivates us to lose weight. Unsurprising to me, as a fat girl my whole life, research actually tells us that it isn't true at all. Weight bias only creates more disruption for fat people because it creates depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. This is actually in comparison to fat people who don't experience weight bias, but actually are more motivated to lose weight. I get it though. I've always dreamed of that narrative that after all the shame that I felt in my life, the plot twist would be that one day I would show up to my high school reunion, thin as my friends before me, and everyone would ooh and ah at my transformation. I spent almost every day of my teenage years with the same crowd. We loved each other and we hated it. Well, actually, they hated it when I wouldn't come to hangouts because then we wouldn't be complete. But despite all of that, I still felt alone. I felt lonely I felt like an outsider. All because I knew I looked different from all of them, especially the girls. They welcomed me and wanted me around, but my self-esteem was low, and I felt that I was undeserving to be seen with them. So then I overcompensated. I did things that I pegged was out of the goodness of my heart, and I grew up to be a grade A people pleaser, always giving more than what was expected of me, and I felt shame when I wouldn't deliver. All because I wanted people to like me. I wanted them to see me in spite of my fatness, in spite of me looking different. Tell me again, what was the joke? Or who? Is it me? My body? Because a greater institution that's been around far longer than we have has instilled this narrative in us for so long, telling us that we're wrong for how our bodies look. The media has worked so hard for this narrative to exist for so long that it had already seeped into my system. As a writer and a creative, I've had my own challenges when it comes to representing myself in the media. For 2 years, I worked as a writer for television, and not once, not ever did I question why we never hired fat talents. And just last year, working as a creative, my boss had to remind me to add a fat girl to the roster that we were pitching to a brand. This hurt me because I was already teaching camera confidence workshops, and I was telling people to be proud of the bodies that they had. And yet I never even thought to find someone to represent me. In 2011, I wrote this long blog post about me feeling tired of the shame that I have felt for my body. And since then, I've called myself a body positive advocate. That was more than 10 years ago. But here I am, still feeling the effects of body dysmorphia, still a victim of my own shame. Is the media really to blame for all of this? Are they the only ones? My friends? My family? Or maybe it's me. Maybe I've been in this blanket of victimhood for so long that I've found comfort in thinking that I deserved to feel bad because other factors were telling me so. If there's one thing I want to leave with you here today, it's that I've learned years ago that I can't change the world. It's almost impossible. People are far too comfortable where they are now for them to open their minds to something different from what they already know. But I can change one person here. Me. I can change my narrative. I can choose what I consume on social media. I can choose to think of myself as deserving of people's time rather than wait for them to think the same. I can change my story. I thought I would have to wait for my plot twist to happen, where 10 years later I lost all the weight and everybody would love me. I changed that love story. The main characters, me and my body. In one of my favorite books, Shrill by author Lindy West, she writes my favorite quote. Maybe you are thin. You hiked that trail And you are fit and beautiful and wanted, and I am so proud of you. I am so in awe of your wiry brightness, and I'm miles behind you, my breathing ragged. But you didn't carry this up the mountain. You only carried yourself. How hard would you breathe if you had to carry me? You couldn't, but I can. No, I can't change the media on my own overnight. I can't change how fashion magazines refuse to see me. How brands are afraid to create clothing my size, afraid that I would ruin their image. But I can change my own perspective. Fat is not a bad word, unless you mean for it to be. When I call myself fat, it means I'm done with feeling unworthy. I'm done with feeling like my body is wrong. It's my way of healing my younger self and telling her, we grew up fat. We grew up to be the proud fat woman who stands before all of you here today. Thank you.